All right, so here we go. Solving spheres. Remember, we're looking at page 2. Again, students will be solving equations with rational exponents, which means our exponents are going to be fractions. That's what rational means. All right, so let's see how this is going to work. They give us an example up at the top here. And the example we're going to start with is 0.094s to the 3/2 power is equal to 2,000. Now you can already see that this equation looks different from what we saw yesterday. Yesterday the variable that we were solving for was up in the exponent. Today that's not the case. Today your variable is not in the exponent. Okay? You do have an exponent, but that's not where the variable's at. So here's how we're going to do this. This equation that they gave us, 0.094s to the 3/2 power is equal to 2,000. If I were to get rid of this exponent right here, just pretend it's not there, and I gave you the equation 0.094s is equal to 2,000. What would I need to do so that I can solve for the s? Divide by what? Right, 0.094. So let's do that. Go to your calculators for me, and let's divide the 2,000 by the 0.094. This is what we would do in a typical equation. That's what we're going to do here. What do we get? And it is going to be a decimal. So what is that decimal? 21,276.59. So all I did was divide 2,000 by the 0.094. What we've just done is we have isolated the base and the power. Power meaning that 3/2, the 3/2, the exponent. So there's the first thing that we do. We isolate the base and the power. Now here's what we're going to do next. Once we have the base and the power isolated, then what we're going to do to solve for s is we're going to raise both sides of the equation to a reciprocal power. Reciprocal power. We're going to raise both sides of our equation to the reciprocal power. Now when I say reciprocal, what does the word reciprocal mean? In other words, that 3/2. What is the reciprocal of 3/2? 2/3, 2/3. We're taking the fraction and flipping it. So what they want us to do is take this s to the 3/2 power and raise it to the 2/3 power. And I'll show you why we're doing that here in a second. We're going to do the same thing on this side over here. Remember the number we had was 21,276.59. We're also going to raise that to the 2/3 power. Because remember, when you're working with equations, whatever we do to one side, we got to do it to the other. So the question is, why did I do that? Why am I raising it to the 2/3 power? Well, remember, we have a rule that says when we multiply these, or when we add these two exponents, we multiply them together. Notice what happens when you multiply those two exponents together. What is 3/2 times 2/3? Put it in your calculator if you don't know. What is 3/2 times 2/3? 1, which is what we want. We want s to the first power, or just the s. Which means we also have to do it to the other side. Remember, we just said, whatever we do to one side, got to do it to the other. So go to your calculators for me again, and do 21,276.59, and raise that to the 2/3 power. Use your caret symbol. 767.83. So we just simplified. So the solution to this equation is s is equal to 767.83. So what we're going to do is treat it like we would a typical equation, but at the very end, in order to get rid of that exponent, we're going to have to raise it to the reciprocal power. That's really the only thing different about these type of equations compared to some of the others that we've seen in the past. All right, so let's take a look at some more examples here. Number 1, we've got a to the 1/3 power plus 11 is equal to 16. The first thing we're going to do is isolate the base and power. In other words, we're going to get a to the 1/3 power by itself. And we're going to do that by subtracting the 11. So if I subtract 11, I'm going to end up with a to the 1/3 power equaling to what? What's 16 minus 11? 5. 16 minus 11 is 5. So notice how I have my base and my power isolated. So I've got one more thing to do. Here's what we're going to do next. We're going to take both sides of the equation and we're going to raise it to the reciprocal power. So I need to know what is the reciprocal of 1/3. What do you get when you flip that fraction upside down? 3 over 1. Well, what is 3 over 1? 3. Okay, so we're going to raise this to the 3rd power, or cube. All right, so of course over here, by doing that, we're going to end up with just the a, which is what we want to do. We want the variable isolated. And 5 to the 3rd power. What is 5 to the 3rd power? 125. We've just solved this equation. A is equal to 125. Any questions on the first one? Okay, second one is going to work pretty much the same way. We're going to start by getting the b to the 5th power by itself. And we're going to do that by adding 184 to both sides. So 59 plus 184. Olivia, what do you get when you add those two numbers together? 59 plus 184. 243. That is not the answer. That's because I got one other thing to do. And that's to take both sides of the equation and raise it to some power. We need the reciprocal of 5. Anybody know what the reciprocal of 5 is? 1/5. 5, same thing as 5 over 1. And what do you get when you flip 5 over 1 upside down? 1 over 5. 1/5. So that's what we're going to use right here for our power. What that means is we're going to end up with b equaling something. Now let's put that in our calculator. What is 243 raised to the 1/5 power? 3. That is your solution. B equals to 3.
So whenever you have a fraction, you have to just, or whenever you have a fraction, you have to just change it to 1.
Yeah, if it's not a fraction, you make it a fraction by putting a 1 underneath, like we did with this one. If it's already a fraction, like the first one we did, well, then you just flip it upside down. All right, let's try another one here, number 3. Now this one's going to require an extra step. Notice how there's an 11 underneath c to the 3rd plus 4. So we're going to take care of that part first. And the way we're going to do that is by multiplying both sides by 11. This way we can come over here and cancel those out. All right, so what do you get when you multiply 20 times 11? 220. 220. Okay, now it's looking like number 1 and number 2. So the next thing I'm going to do is come over here and subtract 4. 220 minus 4 is 216. Now that I have my base and my power isolated, I'm going to take both sides and raise it to some power. And that power is going to be the reciprocal of 3. So Samantha, what's the reciprocal of 3? 1/3. Very good. That's going to be the power. So that means we're going to end up with C equaling whatever 216 is to the 1/3 power. Put that in your calculator, see what you get. 6. So your solution here is 6. So again, guys, it's really not that much different from what you already know. The only thing we're adding here is the reciprocal power. All right, let's try number 4. Now, before we do that reciprocal power, you got to make sure there's nothing in front of the variables. We've got to get rid of the 16 first. And we're going to do that by dividing by 16. So we've got b to the 1/4 is equal to, help me out, 40 divided by 16. What's 40 divided by 16? 2.5. Yeah, right now it's okay. 2.5. course, that's not the answer yet, because the next thing we're going to do is come over here and raise this to the reciprocal power. So I need to know what's the reciprocal of 1/4. 4. 4 over 1, which of course is the same thing as 4. So let's see what we get here. 2.5 raised to the 4th power would be
39.06.
39.0625. And I'm writing that out because if you notice over there to the right-hand side, there's an answer bank,
Oh, yeah.
and it's the only one that matches up. Okay, so that's where that 39.0625. Of course, remember, we can also write these as fractions.
It's 625 over 60.
Right. So we can also do it the fraction. But I'm just looking at the answer banks, which is why I'm leaving it at 39.0625. Okay, number 5. Number 5. What do I need to do first on number 5? Add the 35. So let's start there. Add 35. So now I've got 5x to the 3/2 power. That's going to equal to 135. Next thing I'm going to do is take care of the 5. So we're going to come and divide both sides by 5. So 135 divided by 5 is 27. That's not the answer. We got one last thing to do, and that's to take both sides and raise it to the reciprocal power. And the reciprocal of 3 over 2 is 2 over 3. That's the reciprocal. All right, so what is 27 raised to the 2/3 power? 9. So the solution here to number 5 is 9. Okay, number 6, more of the same thing. Let's start by adding 8s to both sides. 40 plus an 8, 40 plus 8 is 48. Next thing I'm going to take care of is the 3 that's in front of the variable. So let's come over here and divide by 3. 48 divided by 3. What is 48 divided by 3? 16. We're almost done. Got one last thing to do. And that's to take both sides of the equation and raise it to the reciprocal power. The reciprocal of 4/3 is 3/4. So that's going to leave me with y equaling something. What is 16 raised to the 3/4 power? 8. 8. Therefore, your solution to this one is. All right. Did you get 16 raised to the 3/4 power in your calculator?
Oh, I did it wrong. I put y 3/4 and 6.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is going to make a difference. All right, the last two that we're going to look at here are a little bit different. Just a little bit, though. Very good. And we'll do that here in a second. That is correct. We are going to have to change the decimal to a fraction so we know what the reciprocal is. But we'll hold on to that in a minute. But first thing we're going to do is add the 68.5. Let's do that part first. So let's see, 103 plus 68.5 would be how much? 171.5. Now we're going to go ahead and divide by 0.5. So 171.5 divided by the 0.5 is 343. Now, Mason made the suggestion that 1.5, since we're going to need the reciprocal here in a second, let's go ahead and convert 1.5 into a fraction. What is 1.5 written as a fraction? No, not 1/2. Y'all know how to change those decimals. Use your calculator, guys. Go to your calculator and type in for me 1.5. Then use your math button. It's the very first one. Enter. And it's going to change it to what? 3/2. There it is. That's the fraction we're looking for. 1.5 is the same thing as 3/2. Now that we have that fraction, we can go ahead and multiply it by the reciprocal. And that reciprocal, of course, is 2 thirds. So what is 343 raised to the 2/3 power? 49. So the answer to number 7 should be 49. All right, one more, number 8. Same thing as number 7. We'll start off by adding 112. Of course, that 2.4, that exponent, we'll change that also here in a minute. 400 plus 112 is 512. Now it gets a little trickier. That 1/8, what are we going to do to take care of that 1/8? What? We're going to multiply it by 8. Right? That's how we're going to get rid of that 1/8. That's gone. So 512 times the 8 is
4,096.
4,096. Now let me go ahead and change that 2.4. If I change that 2.4, what are we going to end up with?
12 over 5.
12 over 5. So 2.4 as a fraction would be 12 over 5. And we need that. This way we can go ahead and multiply by, or not multiply, but raise the type to the reciprocal power, which in our case is going to be 5 over 12. All right, so what is 4,096 raised to the 5/12 power? 32. So the answer here to number 8 should be 32. All right, what do you think? Not too bad? Can handle it? All right.
Thanks. Today's